Chapter 39. She is shy. Good, then why don't you kiss me in front of everyone to show your love now? They kiss his ass. She would rather die than kiss his lips which were hiding fangs in it. No matter how seductive his lips were and how attractive his face was, the soldier was not going to accept defeat. Do not tell me that you are shy, honey, he asked with a smile when he did not see her moving at all. Her eyes had already narrowed on his lips, and then she gulped and bit her lips. He had thought that she would agree since she was expecting a kiss just a while ago. Sigh, he had to coax more to the girl. Shy. They all could not correlate Hazel and shy word together at all. What if everyone closes their eyes? Would you kiss me then? He asked with a teasing smile on his face as if he was trying to coax her. Did he think she was a 5-year-old baby that would fall into such a lousy trick? Sigh, looks like my wife is too shy. Why didn't everyone close their eyes so that she could kiss me? The man shook his head and took a deep sigh as if he was helpless too against the tantrums of her. That would not be needed. She took a deep breath to muster her courage and looked at the man with determined eyes. Rather than dragging it and feeling more embarrassed, she would rather give a peck to the man and get done with it. With that she looked at the man with fierce eyes. When Raphael heard Hazel, a triumphant smirk formed on his face, but he blinked when he looked at her face. It did not look like a shy girl who was going to kiss her husband for the first time. It looked more like a knight who was going to war and staring at her enemy with fierce eyes. It felt like she was coming to stab a dagger in his chest rather than kissing him. What is with that fierce eyes and glaring face? His face turned dark and cold looking at that look on her face. He really much wanted to show her how to kiss a man, but then it even showed that she had never kissed before. With that thought, his dark face suddenly turned sunny bright. A wide grin formed on his face when the girl finally kissed his cheeks. It could not even be called a kiss. It would be an exaggeration if he would take it as a peck. After bedding so many women in the past, he had completely forgotten about the naivety of an innocent girl. Hazel was like fresh air after smelling the same fragrant scent for so many years. He touched the place where her lips had touched him, even when it was for a second, and sighed. It looked like he had to wait for a long time for her to grow up. Oh my, all of you are still standing here. Do you all enjoy being a third party so much? Or is the party not interesting enough? He raised a brow and asked in an exaggerated voice. Everyone looked at each other with an awkward face, before scattering around when his gaze fell on Vanessa, who had still not left, but crying in front of Diana, who was looking torn. She had pursued her lips as her hand was held tightly by the upset vampire. A smirk formed on his lips, but his eyes had turned so much cold that Hazel shivered. She rubbed her hands with her palms as she looked at him. She had already started to understand his mood swings, though he kept hiding them under his harmless smile. He looked like a warm and gentle person who could not even hurt an ant, but in reality, he was cold, cruel and merciless, who would not blink an eye even if he had to stab his family to death. Her eyes instinctively followed and found Diana. Only Diana was the one she failed to understand. The girl seemed too kind, always helping everyone, but it did not fit her position and species. Before she could stare further, they both turned, and Vanessa passed her a death glare, as if she could not wait to kill her. Diana shook her head as she held the hand of the girl as if warning her, and she nodded and looked away. They both took 2 slow and precise steps towards them, and Hazel realized that the show had only started and the night was going to be too long, while she was feeling tired already. How she missed the soft bed and pillow, and those peaceful days with Anne. She wonders if the girl misses her too. She had written a letter to her but did not get any reply yet. That thought annoyed her, that she could not bring Anne with her. While Vanessa and Diana took it, she was scowling while looking at them. Look, I have told you that she was behaving too high and mighty. If you would not teach her a lesson, she was going to be only more arrogant in the future. Vanessa muttered through gritted teeth. Her fangs were already peeking through her lips due to the rage she was feeling in her chest, but Diana still did not reply. She did not pay any heed to the rumbling girl as she reached towards the couple. With a sweet smile on her face, she bowed to both of them and then looked at Raphael with confident eyes. She had that confidence and charm, yet he sweet look which could bring any man on his knees. "My lord, can I talk to you for a minute?" "Yes, tell me." Raphael nodded in a blink as if he was waiting for them all this time, but the girl only shook her head and looked at him with wary eyes. "I mean in private. In private." Raphael repeated the words with a raised brow, as if challenging them to repeat it. That only infuriated Vanessa further. "Yes, I have something important to discuss." Her eyes wandered from him to Hazel, who was looking bored with the discussion. She was not even looking at them, but in the food section. Yet the man turned to her to ask for her permission. Vanessa gritted her teeth in frustration, but there was no change in expressions of Diana, as if she was not even a least bit affected by the presence of Hazel. I think you shall go and talk, since I did not want to see the face of the girl. Her ugly face made me feel nauseating." Hazel waved the hands in front of her as if the air around her filled with foul smell due to Vanessa. What do you?" Vanessa took hurried steps toward Hazel, but was held back by Diana. "Please, my lord, the matter is only getting worse." Raphael sighed and nodded when Diana looked at him with a pleading gaze. Her voice had an urgency that even Raphael could not let go of. "Be good, honey, and wait for me right here. I will be back soon." He cupped her cheeks and gazed into her eyes with an adoring look, but she knew he wanted her to stay away from the councilman and not spout nonsense since they were about to leave. Did he think she was a child who needed his guarding all the time? She wanted to tell him that she was safest when she was far away from him. But she nodded her head like a sweet, innocent child. Raphael's eyes flickered, but there was no way to see through his real emotion or guess what he was thinking with that kind and sweet smile on his face. He really looked like an angel of mercy with that look. He nodded, and all three of them walked away from Hazel, who finally felt like she could breathe. Since the time she had entered, Raphael was sticking to her like a bug that would not let her go away no matter what. She had not even eaten well in all that pressure. She took slow steps towards the food section, as if she was only wandering while accidentally reaching there. After changing the menu once again, it has all kinds of assorted dishes with all types of meat, and the veggies from before were on the sidelines too. "Do you need anything, Your Majesty?" They were still calling her Lady Hazel before the party. Now she had suddenly become the Empress, huh? She raised a brow on their sudden change of attitude. "I wanted to have dessert." They all nodded, and with the speed of lightning they brought a ton of sweets and desserts for Hazel. They were so much that Hazel was sure she would not be able to finish all of them even if she ate the whole night without taking a break. Being the Empress is not as bad as I had thought," she mused as she picked up a blueberry cake. The soft texture melted in her mouth the moment it touched her tongue. Everything made for the banquet was of best quality and gave utmost importance to. The sweet yet a bit tangy taste felt heavenly. Her eyes closed, and a blissful smile formed on her face that had not come even when Raphael had danced with her, or even when he had fired Vanessa's father for her sake. She looked content and sweet with that smile, that she even forgot that she was standing in the alley of bloodsuckers for a moment. On the other side, so I sum up the whole discussion in a single line, that we all think you are taking the matter too far, my lord. Please reconsider your... So it was that easy. Just when Diana was about to end her half an hour-long monologue, the face of the man shone as if he had seen a miracle. His eyes flickered, and he muttered a sentence that brought new hopes on the face of the girls. He waved his hands into the air and called a nearby Maid who came running. "My lord, I want a dozen blueberry cakes in my bedroom every night." "Yes, my lord." blueberry cake. Diana and Vanessa exchanged glances, but both were looking equally clueless. Whole face turned ugly, but she covered it with a neutral smile again. It was as if she was not least bit affected, but her hands clenched tightly under her dress. She was so frustrated when she noticed that his gaze was on Hazel all this time, that he did not even listen to what she was saying. She was muttering like a fool all this time. In the end, she had made a joke of her in front of even maids who had realized that they needed to keep Hazel happy to get his grace. "Pardon, I did not get what you meant, my lord." It was better to act like a fool than to accept that he did not care about her even a bit. "Nothing, I was just looking after my wife. She seems to be too fond of these cakes." "Anyways, what were you saying?" Here her wish to act like a fool went out of the window too. Now she could only smile like a fool to cover her embarrassment. Taking a few deep breaths, while her nails dug deep into her arms. "I am talking about your decision, my lord. I think it was too harsh a punishment. Lady Vanessa had been our friend for so long." Vanessa nodded as she came forward to plead the same, when the eyes of the man turned cold. "Do you want me to prove a liar by taking back the words I have announced in front of everyone, Diana? I have expected better from you. What shall I eat next?" Hazel roamed her eyes on the other desserts that the maid had brought when she felt someone was staring at her for long. Could it be that they were back already? How could that demon have so much time to spend with her? Isn't he a lord? Didn't Lord work all day? She cussed Raphael a few times in her heart. Only then the smile came back on her face and she turned. "Why do I feel that you were not expecting me, my lady?" The man smiled and forwarded his hands as if asking for a dance, but Hazel looked at him with a blank face. "Who are you?" She crossed her hands in front of her chest and asked in a cold voice when the man stayed silent. His face turned red. Only he knew whether he was embarrassed or furious as he stared at the girl with narrowed eyes, but he knew many were watching her, so he could not be further rude. I am your brother, the one who came to you before you were going to get married." The voice came out through gritted teeth as his eyes filled with hatred, but his face still had that smile even when it turned ugly. "Brother, I did not remember any brother. There must be some misunderstanding, but I have grown up in an empty palace with only a maid," she replied nonchalantly as she tried to leave. The man stood there stunned. He was expecting so many reactions when he would come to meet her. Even her crying on his shoulders and begging him to take her back was one of them, but he had never expected her to refuse him from recognizing. What would he do now? Wait, Hazel. Father would be very furious when he would know about it. What if he tells Raphael your true intentions of coming here? He held her hands and pulled her back towards him and whispered those words in urgency. But before he could say further, a bunch of knights charged forward and held the man. They held both hands of the man behind his back like he was a prisoner. Hazel turned and smirked when she looked at his condition. Their last meeting was still vivid in her memories. How could she forget him? When she thought about that day, her brows knitted into a thin line, but then she chuckled. "Well, let's just say that you all have forced me to be the bride of the vampire lord. Then I was sent here with maids only that ran away the other day, as if they have done the task of selling me now. They have nothing to do with me. I didn't even receive proper clothes or jewels from the empire, like I was just discarded as a sacrificial lamb. Then how will I remember a brother I have seen only once? And as long as talking to Raphael, the man is over there. You can go and talk to him about anything as you please. Why should I care about it?" She muttered in a nonchalant tone, but her eyes had turned so cold and her face so dark that the man trembled. He could not believe that she was the simple and innocent girl who used to live alone all her life just 3 days ago. "Make sure that no one approaches me now, or I will make sure that you will get punished in the end." The knights bowed their heads with a tremble. They noticed how much importance she had gained in a single day, so they did not dare to anger her. She swept one last glance to the haughty man, who was raging like a madman, and snorted. You wait. I will. Did she think that she was going to spend a long time here? She was going to die anyway, yet she was not ready to do what they wanted. Such a shameless and ungrateful wench. His father had nurtured her in the palace in vain. He wanted to just slap her and remind her where she belonged. Hazel rolled her eyes when she heard the threat. Was it the favorite one, or they were just novice villains who did not know how to treat anyone? If you did not close that filthy mouth of yours, I will not even ask you to wait as I order the knights to kill you this instant. Her cold words created a shiver in the crowd who were looking at the scene with curious eyes. Oh yeah. See, this is how threats are given. They needed to be impactful. Your threat was too lousy. She flicked her hair with arrogance as she looked down at him, who was stunned. So, she was only threatening him to teach him how to give threats, or was she serious? He looked at her with bewilderment, but she had already turned to leave. He wanted to open his mouth and call her once again, but he was not sure if it would work. What if she actually asked the knights to kill him? He wanted to beat her, but fear of his life was greater than that. You are flying too high under the wings of Raphael. But do not forget that he was not your guardian but your keeper. I will see you when he will cut your wings with his own hands. The sound of applause halted her steps, and she gulped. What if Raphael asks why she punished her own family? She should have thought of a valid reason. She trends with a flattering smile on her face, which stiffened when she noticed Raphael was still not there, but the man who was glaring at her in the morning. I must say, I have never expected that you would treat humans like that. What did that even mean? Since you are one of us now, I want to congratulate you with a dance, my lady. Shall we? Damien's eyes shone like a predator. What was he even trying to do? There was no way that the vampire wanted to congratulate her, and for what? She raised a brow as she looked intently at him. She did not even blink as she continued to stare at him for some time. Why are you thinking so much? We are a family now. I did not mean any harm. He smiled and assured her with a gentle look, yet his eyes were sharp like a beast. He had thought that she would be embarrassed by his words, and would hold his hands to maintain her image, since she was putting on an act of strong and brave empress. The challenge was just perfect, not overboard yet able to leave a strong impact on her image. But he was stunned when she chuckled, instead of getting embarrassed of accepting his hands. His brows knitted and he looked at her with a frown. Was she laughing at him? I must say, Damien, you have a good sense of humor. She shook her head as she held her stomach as if she had heard a good joke. So she was indeed laughing at him. His jaws clenched as he resisted the urge to punch her and wiped that smirk off her face. Of course, I know that you are not harmless, since Raphael is much stronger than you when it comes to both brains and brawn. I am sure even my knights are enough to handle you if you try something funny. So, why would I be wary of you? The man felt insulted as his face turned darker when she spoke in between her laughter, as if she could not believe he had just said so. If that is the case, then why are you staring at me and thinking so much? It is just a dance, he insisted as he tried to keep his face neutral, which was taking more strength than he had thought. Not only was she looking ugly, but she even had a foul mouth that was hard to handle. Whenever she opened her mouth, everyone around her felt an urge to beat her. That is because you are ugly. Just when the man was still cursing her in his heart, he was dumbfounded by her reply that he was not even able to react. Did that ugly witch really call him? Him, ugly? He was the second most handsome prince of the empire. Girls, either human or vampire, follow him everywhere. There was not a single day when the girls did not offer themselves to him, yet this dumb and ugly girl dared to call him ugly. Pardon? No, he must have heard wrong. Since he was calling her ugly in his mind all this time, his thoughts must have echoed. Yes, he nodded with that thought and looked at the girl with a blank face when she sighed. It was such an audible sigh, as if she had borne heavy grievances, and she could not bear it any more. You did not need to apologize, since it was not your mistake. We cannot choose our faces, so it is not your fault that you are ugly. She moved closer and patted his shoulders as if trying to console him. I must say God is too unfair. Look at Raphael, not only he has perfect looks, immense strength, highest power and wealth, now he even has got me. Could there be any weakness in him? She shook her, but her eyes were filled with pride, and then she looked at him and sighed again. And look at you, you were losing with him in everything, and now you are trying to gain a favor from me. Trust me, I tried hard to bear your ugly face after all. It was just a matter of a dance, but I really could not bear it. I am allergic to ugly things, so if you please excuse me and make away, I am feeling nauseating again. She even pinched her nose and made an ugly face as if she could not bear to look at him any more, just like she had done with Scarlet. I truly feel bad for you, Damien, but that does not mean I can bear with you. Though her voice was apologetic, her eyes were filled with disdain as if she was looking at a pest. He was so enraged and dumbfounded that not a single word came from his mouth. He was afraid that he would really kill her if she continued to stand in front of her. He only felt better when she walked past him and left him alone to handle her words. What the hell did she think of herself? She was such an arrogant bitch. Trying to control himself, he walked out of the party towards the garden where he saw Vanessa drinking the blood of a maid. She should have stopped after a while, but she was so enraged that she could not control herself, and after a few more minutes, the girl fell on the ground with her body turning completely white. Her skin had wrinkled as if she had aged a lot, but there was no wound on her skin, and her eyes were still open wide. Her lips were still parted as if she wanted to shout, but no voice was left. Damien walked past the body as if he could not see it and tusked. Killing humans when the council is just a meter away. You have turned bold after your father was thrown out of the council. Do not tell me that you are planning to turn into a rebel. In the end, none of the other vampires or councilmen dared to go closer to Hazel, and even Raphael was busy entertaining the guests, so Hazel consumed her time in eating her heart fill. Enjoying the soft symphony of the music, she did not realize how the time passed and everyone started to leave. Is the party going to end? She asked the maid that was following her, and she nodded. Hazel scanned the room and took a breath of relief. Finally, she could let her guards down. She was standing on pins and needles all this time. Then I want to leave for my room too, she announced as she stood up from her seat, but the Maiad panicked. She looked around with fear and shook her head like a rattled drum. Oh, you cannot leave, my lady. As a host, you should leave the party in the end, she whispered slowly, as she was afraid that she would be killed by Raphael for scolding his new lover. But at the same time, she was scared that she would be blamed for not telling her about the etiquettes. But as a noble, shouldn't she already know about it? Or was it that the land of humans and vampires had different etiquettes? Oblivious to the turmoil the maid was facing, Hazel just rolled her eyes. What if I go? Who would dare to stop me or scold me? Since she was given the powers, no matter what the reason was, she should just enjoy it. Who knew what cost she had to pay for that in the future? No one, but she could be punished for that, but she gulped the thoughts in her mind. Without waiting for further response, Hazel stood up and walked towards the stairs. Many eyes were turned to her direction when they saw her leaving, and then turned to stare at the Emperor, who was having a drink with a warm smile on his face. His eyes were staring at Hazel like a hawk stare at his prey, yet he did not move. Once she was gone, the councilman walked to Raphael. My lord. Raphael turned his head and stared at the man with a calm look, but his eyes were filled with sarcasm. Oh, you are still here. I thought that you would not come back since you have already achieved your target. A tinge of guilt passed over the face of man, but it vanished as soon as it came. I did, but even you get over 50% of the seats on the council, while humans get only 30%. Is it not a win-win situation for you?" added the man in a polite but cold tone, and Raphael chuckled. "Haven't I pampered the doll you have sent this time well in exchange?" His face turned dramatic, and his hands moved to his chest. "Look, I even expelled a trustworthy person just for her. Yet you pointed out only the benefits I am getting from it. I am hurt." The way he mentioned it in an over-dramatic way, as if he was heartbroken by his accusations, that the jaws of Edward clenched. He really wanted to holler at the night creature, and wanted to tell him that he had done it intentionally. He could make a fool of others, but he had seen how he used the girl to get rid of a competitor, and even showed the council that he was the one in control now. And at the same time claimed that he is taking care of the pawn of peace very well this time, and had no intention of killing her. And the dumb girl. He was sure that he had won the trust of the dumb girl who was wary of him. Only God knows how he was going to play with her now. "That, I am thankful for caring so much about the girl. If I did not know any better, I would have thought that you have orchestrated the whole plan from the sidelines. Ha ha ha." With an awkward laugh, he ended the topic right there, as he knew he would not gain anything by taking enmity from this man. With the new powers, he was the strongest even when it comes to politics. That is why I like you, Edward. It was nice doing business with you. Do not worry, I will not kill you even if I kill the whole council one day." Cold sweat started to form on the face of Edward as he stared hard at the man with widened eyes. He did not know whether he should thank the man for sparing his life, or should he accuse him for starting another war soon. But in the end, he just nodded as his hands instinctively reached his neck and rubbed it as if he could already feel the pain. "Then, the council is taking its leave. We will make a report that the peace treaty has been successful, and both parties should be given their side of the bargain." With that, the man bowed his head and left. "Finally, your curiosity is settled. Huh," he muttered in the empty space when Scarlett came out of the balcony on his left side, which seemed to be empty all this time. "You could have just told me that you are putting on a show for everyone. You know how furious I was. I would not only have killed the girl but even attacked you." Though she said the words nonchalantly, her eyes were gleaming and her voice was grave, but the man just rolled his eyes. "I know you love your life too much to do it." So, now that the council is gone, can we kill the girl?" Madness and bloodlust could already be seen on her face as the words came out of her mouth, but the man sighed as if he was disappointed and shook his head. "To my dismay, no. I still need her to get what I want." Hazel slumped on the sofa as she entered the room. Her back was aching for standing straighter all the time, and his feet were paining from the high heels she was wearing. Since she had spent most of her time alone in the palace, she had never stood on the formalities of meeting so many people and wearing tight clothes and heels all the time. She had even spent the whole day barefoot, or wearing soft fur slippers the entire time. "It has only been a day, and I am already feeling exhausted," she sighed as none of her plans worked so far. In fact, she felt like she had fallen deeper into the pit she was trying to get out of. Not only had she not been able to convince the council to take her with them, she had even made all of the vampires her enemy. No matter where she had looked, she had only felt bloodlust and hatred from them, as if they wanted to burn her alive. "My lady, do you need anything?" She turned her head and stared at the scared bunny she had forgotten about. The girl looked like she would jump at her place with the slightest voice in the room. The thought brought a smirk on her face as she let go of the high heels she was holding all this while. Oh, as expected, the girl covered her face from her both hands as if the ghosts had invaded the room, and they would not be able to see her if she covered her face. She reminded her of the cat in the palace that used to drink milk with closed eyes. "It was just my heels. You do not need to worry so much," Hazel replied in a nonchalant voice as she rubbed her sore feet slowly. The maid had a smile that was uglier than the cries. If only she could explain to her new empress how dangerous the place was. The maids often seemed to disappear without a trace, as their life was of lesser value than even the horses in the stable. She could only pray that she would be able to survive and leave this place one day. Yes, my lady, you are right. I'm just a scared girl. Do you need anything? Late night tea or a message or a warm bath? Hazel was about to shake her head as she was still full with all the desserts she had eaten to keep herself busy instead of just standing there doing nothing, which made her overeating. When she heard the last choice and nodded. A warm bath would be nice, thank you. The maid nodded and bowed her head as she scurried away to get the preparations done, only to return in no time. My lady, the water is ready. Shall we go? Her tone was so polite and full of consciousness that Hazel wanted to tell the girl to relax a bit, but she knew that the girl would not listen, so she just nodded and stood up. Following the girl to the bathroom that was larger than her room in the old palace, she waited as another maid helped her in getting rid of the tight corset, and finally Hazel was able to breathe again freely. Letting go of the dress that fell on the floor once the dress was unzipped and the threads of the corset was opened, Hazel entered in the warm water. The water was neither too hot nor too cold. The temperature was just right, that instantly relaxed her sore muscles. An involuntary long breath left her body as she closed her eyes and leaned in. Soon, she felt the hands of the maids on her back and neck, and her body started to feel rejuvenated with the massage. A moan escaped her lips as the treatment fell heavily after the night. The hands of the girl stopped for a second before moving again with more vigor, and Hazel closed her eyes. My lady, the water had already turned cold. I think you should come out now. The shaky voice of the girl forced Hazel to open her eyes reluctantly, only to realize that her skin already had wrinkled, and the water felt chilly now. She shivered and nodded her head, still shocked that she fell asleep in the water. Shaking her head, she came out of the water, and the same maids helped her in wearing the nightgown as she walked back into the room. You all may go now, she whispered as she let the water dripping out of her hair without caring about them to dry to tie them. The hideous makeup from her face was already gone, and all she wanted to do was rest for a whole. The maids looked at each other, unsure of what to do. The Lord would be here soon, and the Empress was still unpresentable with her hair scattered all over and no makeup. Let her be, if she can go with that face in her own wedding party and still get all the attention of the Lord. Then her natural face is much better, whispered one in the ears of the other, and after a second the maid nodded. Good night, Your Highness. Both maids bowed their heads and left the room when Hazel sighed. Though her body was much better, her feet and ankle were still in pain. She placed her feet on the sofa and stared at the small red blisters that were formed on her feet. Sigh, they look horrible. Why do I feel that they were still smelly even when I have taken such a long bath? She muttered with annoyance as she brought her feet closer to her face to smell them. It would be fine since no one was here, she told herself when the door of the room suddenly burst open, and in came the night creature who was responsible for her condition, only to find her smelling her feet. Awkward. That you? What? What are you doing here? The girl immediately let go of her feet and stood erect, almost stumbling on her nightgown that she had to tell the table beside the sofa for her support. Why in the name of Lord even the nightgown needs to be so fancy and mopping the floor? Completely forgetting about her clumsy movements, she put all the blame on the dress that was longer than her and the night creature that was standing in front of her with a raised brow. Raphael took slow steps towards her without giving her any reply as he stared at her, and then at her feet with a raised brow. Her red eyes were intimidating like always. Her nerves started to feel jittery. Hey, where are you coming to? And I asked, what are you doing here? Since she stood up abruptly from the sofa, she could not even take a step back or run away as the door was behind him. If she had to run for her life, then she had to cross him first. But the way he stared at her with those predatory eyes, she felt like her feet had been frozen. "Did you forget that this is my room?" he asked with a look that said, "You are the intruder here." Of course, she knew that it was his room, but he had left her alone last night, so she had assumed that he was not going to come back. He must have many partners to give her company anyway. Then why was he even here? Before she could think of a proper reply, the man had already come closer and stood just an inch away from her. "What happened to your feet?" Had she been having a hallucination, or was his voice really filled with concern? She raised her head to look into his eyes, but his dark red eyes were too difficult to judge. She only felt like they were black holes that would suck her souls away if she continued to look at them, so she looked away. Raphael raised a brow when the girl did not reply to her, but continued to stare as if he had suddenly grown two heads. But then, when he thought that she would say something, she looked away abruptly, and he sighed. This was not the first time she was staring at him like that. But there was no love or adoration he often saw in the eyes of the woman that came closer to him. Her eyes were looking at him with vigilance, and always finding a way to run away. He raised his hand, and as expected her eyes widened, and her hands were already trying to get hold of anything strong so that she could protect herself. He could already see her grip on the night lamp, and a nefarious smile formed on his lips as if he was challenging her to show her guts to him. He flicked her forehead, and she already raised the lamp that was on the table beside her. But before she could smash it on his head, she was finally enlightened with the consequences of her actions, and her hands stopped midway. "What are you doing?" He raised his head and stared at the lamp that was in the mid-air, and then at her face that was completely red, yet he did not know it was embarrassment or rage. That. I was trying to clean the dust on it when you came here. I was just showing you how dirty it is." She brought the lamp closer to her face and rubbed one of her fingers on it, yet not a single grain of dust was found. It was spotting clean that her smile turned ugly when she looked at his probing eyes and gulped again. When she would finally apologize, she covered it up again and replied with an awkward smile on her face. "See, how much have I cleaned now? That's how it should be from the start." Raphael wanted to laugh at her self-righteous tone and her courage to lie so absurdly. Did she think he was a 5-year-old kid? She can fool with such lame excuses. Rolling his eyes at her cheekiness, he sat down as he could not call her out when she was looking at him with such a pleading gaze. Her eyes shone like a sly fox, gleeful that she had been successful in fooling him when he pulled her hands and forced her to sit behind him. Her eyes widened at the sudden turn of events when she fell straight into his lap. Looking at him like a scared bunny looking at the beast, she gulped. Fear started to crawl in her eyes again when she realized that they were only a breath away. The proximity was too much for her to handle it. She wanted to push him, but she did not want to fall into trouble once she had solved the matter of the lamp, that she could only wait for a second to see what he was up to. When she had thought of his actions, a lot of wild thoughts started to fill her mind, but never had she thought that he would bend to pull her feet closer and place them on the sofa. He stared at the red blisters as if he was staring at his mortal enemy. His eyes had narrowed, and cold started to form on his face. "That I was just checking it. I didn't mean to. Did you get blisters due to heels?" He cut her off in the mid-sentence, and she bowed her head like a child that was reprimanded due to the mistake of others, but nodded her head. "You don't need to smell them, but apply an ointment on them. Did you have a bath recently?" When she nodded again, he shook his head like he was talking to a fool. "It looks like I have to kill 2 other maids tonight." Her eyes widened as she looked at the night creature who killed people more than he took breaths. "Why are you killing the maid this time?" The words left her mouth before she could stop herself with a deep frown on her face. Noticing his gaze on her, she realized she had shown him emotions that could prove her weak. I mean, not that I care, but I still want to know why you want to kill the maids who had given me the bath. She still remembered the pale face of the maid who was sure that she was going to get killed soon. She could not remember her breaking any kind of memorandum. Then why? Could it be that he would kill everyone that was around her? That's because I did not like that she got the chance to touch you while I did not. Her mouth formed a big O when she saw him shrugging his shoulders nonchalantly that even a big egg could fit her mouth perfectly. Would he just be going to kill everyone like that? Her eyes moved to his hands as she could see blood in them. She could not even fathom how many people he had killed that way, and she could not help but feel regret that it was partly because of her. Come here. She instinctively crawled a few steps away on the sofa when she heard him calling her, and his eyes narrowed on her face. Did you have a hearing problem, huh? This time his voice had already turned so cold that she gulped her own saliva. Though her face was still nonchalant, her heart was rummaging hard in her ribcage as she crawled closer to him on the sofa. Tisk, you are too slow, he muttered as he pulled her closer, and this time her legs ended up on his lap from where she had run away just a few minutes ago. Close your eyes. Not in this life. Her eyes widened as she stared hard at him. Only then did she notice that he had a small red bottle in his hands. Could it be blood? She immediately discarded the idea looking at its size. It was too small for that. Then what could it be? It could be nothing good if it was coming from this man. Could it be a poison? Had he decided to kill her through feeding him? As if on clue, the door was knocked and a maid came in with a trolley of food and stopped closer to them. She could see that she was a new one whom she had never seen before. The smell of blueberry cake filled her nostrils, and her eyes turned away from the face of the maid, towards the trolley that was only filled with cakes, and most of them were blueberry ones. Could it be? Her eyes narrowed at the man who was looking at her with expectations, and her eyes turned cold. As if cold air was blowing on her neck, she felt a chill run down her spine. Not in this life she was going to give up on her chance to live. Even if life was full of struggles, she just did not want to accept death. I have eaten more than food, my lord. I do not think I am hungry anymore. Maintaining her composure, she replied in a soft voice. Tusk, did I say that they were for you? Her face turned red with embarrassment as she pursued her lips and puffed up her cheeks. Though he had not said the food for her, she was sure that the food was not up to his liking. It was all sugary and creamy. She could not imagine him eating that even when he showed a warm and gentle personality. With her puffed-up cheeks, her pouting lips were looking more kissable. She was looking so adorable that he wanted to pinch them, and so did he. Do not frown. Of course the food is for you. With the fear of getting poisoned, she forgot that she was sitting still in his laps, and the strong senses of the night creature helped him in hearing her thumping heart beats and the fear that was crawling in her heart. She stared hard at the man who was pinching his cheeks as if she was a doll. She wanted to smack his hands away, but at the same time, she did not want to anger the crazy man who had mood swings like a lady suffering from menopause. You can have them later if you want. I saw that you liked them, so I ordered a few for you, since I still did not know much about the hunger pangs of humans. Her eyes were still staring at the food as if her eyes had a scanner, and she could check if the food was poisoned or not when she trembled in his arms, and a shiver ran down her spine. What are you doing? Her eyes snapped back to his hands and the red bottle that was open now. His fingers were moving on the red blisters in a circular motion, yet the touch was so gentle, as if the softest feather was touching her body. It was so warm that she could not explain. Her paining feel instantly felt relief. Yet she still could not imagine that the hands that killed humans here and there relentlessly were applying ointment on her blisters, when he should be appalled by them. Nobles love beauty so much that they feel disgusted just by a little wound or ugly things. Yet, the man did not even make a nauseating face, but even applied the medicine by himself. At the moment it felt like he was as warm, as gentle as his face, and their marriage was not hanging on the death rope. Is it so painful that you are crying? Though Anne had always been with Hazel, she was more like a protector than a family. She was strict to Hazel and always frowned and scolded her for her mistakes. Though they both had spent a lifetime together, even Anne had never tended to her wounds personally. If she would get a scratch or an injury after falling from the tree or while running in the garden, Anne would just scold her and then give her the ointment which she applied by herself. Yet she felt like a soft breeze touched her skin and caressed her cheeks. Even if it was her illusion that he cared for her, she did not care at that moment. She stared at his face as if she wanted to engrave his concern in her heart forever, when he suddenly raised his head and stared back at her. His soft face immediately turned into a frown that shivered her, and her dream was finally broken. "Is it so painful that you are crying?" She blinked, and her hands instinctively reached to her cheeks that were warm and wet. Could she tell him that she was in pain, but it was not physical as he thought? In the end, she did not know what to say, so she bowed her head and stared at her feet that were covered with red ointment now. "If you were hurting so much, then you would have taken off the heels. With that horrendous makeup on your face, who would have cared whether you have worn heels or not?" He was about to flick her forehead again, but once bitten, twice shy. Even before he could touch her forehead, she covered it with her hand and glared back at him. "So you do know that I was looking horrible, yet you demanded a kiss from me. If I did not know any better, I would have thought that your taste is ugly, woman." She was restored with puffed cheeks. She had sacrificed her beauty to get rid of him, but in the end not only she had to accept all his commands, but even had to kiss him in public. It was she who had suffered the losses. What right did he have to complain? HMPH. "I can see you are not in pain anymore and still left with a lot of energy. How about we go for a walk then?" She stared with mouth agape at the man who was looking at her with a raised brow. What kind of cunning man was he? Had he not applied cream to her feet so tenderly as if he was worried to hurt her, and now he was asking her to go for a walk when he knew that she was hurt? She crossed her hands in front of her chest and was about to deny him without hesitation when he added, "Or we can sleep if you are tired." She stared at him, and then at the queen-size bed that would not have enough space between them if they would sleep together on it. And what if he had some other evil thoughts in his mind? That was why he offered a walk, since he knew that she could not and then have to share bed with him. She took back all her thoughts when she thought that the man was caring. He was cunning as a fox. She stood up like a spring, and then started walking towards the door before he could say anything further and make it more miserable. The night is beautiful. It would be a waste if we would coop up here all night." With such great enthusiasm, she opened the door and walked out of the room as if she was never hurt in the first place. A dark ray of light flashed past the eyes of the man, whose face had turned cold as if it was frozen. His darker eyes gleamed with something dangerous that could have trembled all the nights as he stood up slowly and walked behind her. When he walked out of the room, the girl had already reached the other end of the passage. Though she was trying to hide, she was still walking a bit uneasily. He had noticed that in the party too when she had left the dancing stage, but now it was more apparent. "What are you still doing there, my lord? You are too slow," she chided, and as she took step forward enthusiastically when he chuckled. "I am going on a walk, not to attack my enemy. I need to be agile." And so even this was her fault now. "And if I did not know any better, I would have thought you are a frog hopping away from the herons." Great! Not only had he called her an ugly frog, but he even called himself a pretty bird. And what did he mean? It seems she was definitely running away from him. But opposite to her thoughts, she covered her chest with her hands and widened her eyes. She opened her mouth as if she was so shocked. "What are you saying, my lord? I love your company, and even if you are a water shrew, I would not have run away from you." She shook her head to increase the dramatic effect when the smile on his face froze. His face cracked for a second before turning to normal again when he noticed the smirk she was trying to hide. Her eyes were twinkling like a sly fox that had taken her revenge. A cynical smile formed on his face, as if he was mocking his naivety that thought she had already won the battle of wits. No matter what she did, he was still the lord others wary of talking to. "I knew you would always be with me. But since that is the case, why don't you come here and walk beside me while holding my hands like couples do?" Darn, could she say no? She should have known that the cunning vampire would trick her again. Here, a gentleman should take the first step. Before she could find a reason to deny him, he had already covered the distance between them and had held her hands. All she could do was smile, which came out reluctant too. Before they could even reach the garden, Hazel shivered due to the cold breeze of the snowy night. She rubbed her palms on her hands and regretted not drinking a coat or wrap with her. Looking around at the unlucky snowdrops, she felt like she was walking closer to the graves. It filled her heart with melancholy that even she was surprised when she realized how she had been so sad suddenly. "They look forlorn, aren't they?" She nodded instinctively when his soft voice fell in her ears, and she turned to stare at the man who was looking at a distance. For a second she felt that even he was looking forlorn, or was it another illusion created by him? The man was no less than a chameleon who could show so many fake colors at once that the reader could not know which color was true. She would not fall into the trick again and would have a small walk and then leave, yet she could not help but steal another glance at him when his grip on her hands tightened. The man was walking too silently for his cunning nature and just continued to stare at a distance, as if he was waiting for someone's arrival. "What kind of flowers do you like?" After staying silent all this time, she was not expecting that he would ask her preference, yet a smile bloomed on her face unconsciously when she remembered the small garden she and Anne had nurtured in her annex building. "I like bright flowers like birds of paradise, tulips, lilies, lotus," and she stopped in between when the man started chuckling as if he had heard a good joke. "Pardon?" He shook his head when she stopped walking and blinked at him. She did not need someone to tell her that he was laughing over her. "Nothing, looking at the decoration of today. I thought that you're like a blood-stained flower and flowers of the East." So the petty man did remember it. "Anyways, do you remember the promise you have given to me?" Suddenly she felt that the cold only increased when his face turned grave, and that illusionary smile finally left his face. Taking a deep breath, she looked at him with determined eyes as she nodded. "Yes, I am ready for the promise, but I have two conditions." Though she wanted to survive and she knew only he was the one who could guarantee it, she did not trust him. Could Neve do that? "And what made you think that you are in the condition to do bargaining?" "If you do not know, then let me tell you, from Scarlet to the Ministry, every vampire wanted to kill you. They are only silent because I am favoring you. I have created the illusion that I love you, and if they touch you, they will lose their hands. But both of us know that this is not the case." Slapped by the reality, Hazel felt embarrassed, but she did not stop staring at the night creature with cold and confident eyes. "You did that for your own benefit, my lord. Do you think I did not know that you have received 50% of the seats in exchange? If you would kill me just after the transfer, even if they would not be able to take the seats back, you will lose their confidence. And there might be a chance that humans plan another rebel using my name. Even though you know that they are waiting for my death, it could be used as an excuse to finally end the so-called cohabitation of humans and vampires." His eyes cracked. Even if the pause was for a second, Hazel felt relieved that she did not back away even when her whole body was shivering. "Are you negotiating with me now?" The voice was a threat. She knew it better as she could see it in his eyes. The madness she had heard whenever he announced that he was going to kill someone. "No, I did not dare to. I'm just making sure that I survive." He stared hard at her face, releasing his dominating and imposing aura that could force anyone to come to his knees. Her knees trembled too. She could feel her body breaking into cold sweats that she held her dress so tightly in her hands that her knuckles turned white, yet she did not back away. How much time had passed when the man finally chuckled and applauded, making her blink her eyes. "You are a strong nut to crack, Lady Hazel. I must say that I have chosen a strong lady to kill me this time." Her eyes widened and her throat ran dry when she heard him. She opened her mouth but closed it again as she could not think of any excuse that she could give, and she knew denying would only infuriate the night creature, who knew much more than he showed. In the end, she took a deep breath and only replied, "I never intended to follow their plan. I have never tried to kill you." Since she knew she was not strong enough and she was sure that even her family knew that, yet they chose her as a sacrificial lamb. That is why you are still alive. Other humans did not have that much brain." He shook his head, and she finally realized why he had killed his previous wives, and she thanked God that she did not try anything funny. "So, is that a yes, my lord?" Another amusing smile formed on the face of the night creature as he felt the shivering of the girl, yet she was trying to take a brave front. "That will depend on your conditions. What are they anyway?" A glimmer of hope filled her eyes when she heard his leisure voice. At least he was not furious for challenging him. "They are quite simple, my lord. My first condition is you will not touch me or come closer to me if we are not in public or acting like a couple. And second, I will not kill, injure or do anything that would hurt any other being, either it's human or vampire. I know that you want to use me as your tool, but I have my own ethics and morals. I do not want to stain my hands. Except that I will do anything in exchange for staying alive and living a normal life." He raised a brow as he smirked, but his eyes had turned cold. She could feel that something had changed on his face, that her fear doubled. "And you still call that life normal? Being used as a tool and dancing like a puppet in the hands of others? You still call this life worth living? What a joke! I would have laughed if it would not have been so disgusting." Her cheeks burned as she felt embarrassed when he called her life disgusting, when he was the one who was making her his tool and using her for his benefit. If he found it so disgusting, then why was he doing it anyway? He could have freed her after some time, but even expecting it would make her a fool. She clenched her hands, but if he was waiting for her to break down, then he was wasting it. Even if she had to suffer pain, even if it was hard to breathe, and even if she had to walk on the shards of glass, she still wanted to leave. She would not give up no matter what condition she had to face. "Even if you feel disgusted with me, there is no doubt that you need me, my lord, and I am ready to serve you if only you will grant my two wishes." Gulping the bitter taste forming in her throat, she replied in a calm voice with not a hint of humiliation in it. Raphael looked away as if he could not even bear to look at her. Her mere presence was suffocating him as he pinched the space between his eyebrows. His every action was not only insulting, but would have hurt anyone's self-confidence, and the person would have backed away, but Hazel was not fazed even a bit. Though she felt the pain, but more than that she felt irritation, as he had no right to judge her when he was the one using her. "Do not worry, I do not force girls. They come to me on their own. So I promise that I would not initiate, but then I would not stop if you will be the one to take the first step. And if it's about staining your hands with blood, then, as a night creature, I love blood so much to ask you to do it. I would rather drink it all than spoil it." He finally chuckled, and his face looked much better, and she nodded. A breath of relief escaped her lips as she finally felt a bit safe. Whoosh, strange. Since she was so tense, she did not feel that the wind was so chilly, but now that the burden had left her chest, she suddenly felt that she would freeze to death. Her teeth started clattering as she rubbed her hands when he sighed. If you are feeling cold, then go in. Why are you even still standing here? Or are you waiting for me to princess carry you into your room? I would not have minded it, but then you would accuse me that I have broken your first rule. She shook his head as his hands were on his chest in an over-dramatic way. Could he never be normal? What an actor! Then, pardon me for excusing you, my lord. She bowed her head as she held her dress in a formal way when her eyes fell on the ground and she frowned. She crouched on the floor and touched it with her cold fingers. There was a strange pattern on the ground as if large circles had been drawn on it. There was a strange painting, and things like letters were formed on it too. Ouch! She removed her finger instantly as she felt something sharp touching her finger, and blood oozed out instantly. Placing her finger in her mouth, she gave one last glance to the ground and stood up abruptly. Not only him, but even his palace was strange. If she did not know that vampires hate witches more than humans, she would have thought that it was a black magic circle made by a witch. "Excuse me, please," she muttered, and when she saw him nod, she immediately turned and left from there. Once she was at a distance and her back could not be seen anymore, Raphael stopped staring at her and looked down. A few of her blood drops had fallen on the drawings that had been drawn on the ground, but except that nothing changed. How much time had passed when he continued to stand there like a frozen statue and stare at the ground without even blinking, as if he was waiting for a miracle to happen, but in the end, he just sighed and closed his eyes. A melancholic look shrouded all over him again as he turned and left from there. "My lady, it has been 3 days since the cakes were bought and then thrown in the evening. If you do not like this flavor, shall I ask the chef to change the flavor or type? It is not about the flour but the sender of the cake. Who knows what he had mixed in it?" she muttered under her breath. "Pardon. I am not that fond of sweet food. So ask the chef to stop sending the cakes or any other food." The eyes of the maid widened as the food was sent personally by the Lord. Denying it would be refusing his grace. "But my lady," Hazel raised a brow as she started the maid with a cold face. "Are you denying me?" The words were more like a threat. For a second the maid felt it was Raphael who spoke them, and she shook her head. "No, no, my lady. How could I dare to? I immediately go and do as you asked me." She turned and left the room, and Hazel sighed. As he had said, both of the maids who had given her bath and the one who brought her sandals were killed. But like always, Scarlet did not come to argue with her. Neither had seen Diana or Damien come looking for her. If that was still acceptable, then even Raphael had not come even once, as if he had forgotten about her existence completely, except the blueberry cakes that were supplied to her on time. She felt relieved, but at the same time bored while staying in the room all day. Isn't there any work that the Empress was supposed to do? She took another sigh as she slumped on the sofa and stared at the ceiling. She had been staring at it for so long that she even remembered how many flowers were drawn in the painting, how many tiles were on the floor, and how many flowers were used daily to decorate it. If it continued, she would die by boredom first than anything else. No, this would not do. She stood up abruptly, surprising the maids who were still standing beside her. "Do you need anything, my lady?" They came forward instantly when they saw her blazing eyes with a timid look on their faces. I want to go to the library." Since she could not interfere in the working of the palace yet, it would be better to read a book to spend time. The maids looked at each other but nodded their heads since it would not affect the other vampires sharing the palace with her. There was hardly anyone who went to the library, so it should be fine. They nodded and followed Hazel to the library. Oh my, the girl was in the room the whole night. I think the magic of the Empress had worn down since my lord is back on his old ways of spending the night with other girls, and I heard that he had not visited his own room after the wedding party. I have told you it must have been because of the councilman who was sharing the palace, since he was gone. The new Empress is nothing but an old vase to decorate a corner of the palace. Well, at least she is lucky to survive, unlike others. Hearing the sound of footsteps, they turned only to froze in their places. How unlucky could they be to get caught by the person they were bad-mouthing about, even though they were in the most deserted corner of the palace? Who would have thought that she would visit the library after getting cooped up in her room for all these days? My lady, feeling the cold stare of her, they all bowed down hurriedly with guilty eyes. You all seem to have a lot of free time in your hands to gossip and spread rumors. I want all of you to go and pull the weeds from my garden. But my lady, it is still snowing out there. They have never attended to the garden when it snows, as the flowers end up freezing only except the back garden of my lord. Are you refusing to follow my commands? She raised a brow but asked in a gentle tone that just mimicked Raphael. It was enough to leave shudders in their bodies as they shook their heads hurriedly. Then go now, and you, she tilted her head as she stared at one of the maids who had followed her. Go with them and make sure they complete the given task by the evening, or you would be the one to be punished. The maid bowed her head and all of them left. Taking a deep breath, Hazel walked into the library, but even the splendor of such a large collection was not able to take her mind away from the words she had heard. All this time, she wanted Raphael to leave her alone, but now that she had heard he had forgotten about her and was spending time with another woman, why was she annoyed? Of course, if it continued, she would have a pathetic life here. No one would take her seriously, and slowly they would start tormenting her, thinking that she did not have any backup. Was she going to stay like a miserable empress here? No, that would not do. Even if she could not get the attention of the Lord, at least, she can take her position as the empress and perform her duties to have some powers in her hands. In that way, even if Raphael never contacted her, she would have a way to protect herself. She could not live her life dependent on him just because of a promise he could forget any time. With that thought in her eyes, she clenched her fists and stood up abruptly again, surprising her maids. Are we going back, my lady? Yes, but not to my room. We are going to the Empress' office. But before she could take even a step further, all of the maids blocked her way with deathly pale faces. We cannot go there without permission, my lady. Yes, how about you wait here, and I will go and ask Lady Scarlet about it. Hazel's eyes turned cold looking at their fearful eyes. She raised a brow and crossed her hands over her chest. And who do you think Scarlet is? I am the Empress, and I did not need anyone's permission to go anywhere, especially to my own office. Even I want to see who dared to stop me. She started so hard with her cold eyes that they all bowed their heads and did not dare to speak another word when she walked away from there. It took them a few seconds to come back to their senses and follow her with hurried steps in case they would be blamed later. Hazel took slow but confident steps towards the door, which was guarded by two knights on both sides, while the sound of laughter could be heard from inside. Her steps halted when she realized that Raphael was in there too. What if he would think that it was a breach of the contract between them, as he had not ordered her to take over the position of Empress? But the doubt stayed only for a few seconds before she took a deep breath and braced herself for consequences. My lady, you cannot go in. The knights blocked her way with some hesitation. Though they knew that she was the Empress, everyone knew that Raphael had not passed her a single glance once the councilmen left. She was nothing but a decorative piece now, while Scarlet held all the power. Even a fool would know whose side they have to take. I wonder if all the staff of the palace had gone blind or crazy. Do you even know who I am? She raised her voice a bit as she stared at the knights with cold eyes. They exchanged glances, but did not leave the way. "My lady, we did not want to insult you, but Lady Scarlet had ordered us to not let anyone come in until my lord and his new lover is inside the room." New lover, how many women covered him all the time? Such a Casanova. I do not think that a mere assistant to the crown had the right to decide whether the empress can go in and out of her office or not. If you stopped me one more time, I would make sure to punish you for it on the basis of treason. Treason. They still remembered how the chief knight disappeared overnight after he had insulted her on the first day she had come here. With some hesitation and confusion they left her way, and she entered the room full of arrogance. "What are you doing here?" Even though she had already heard the voice of Hazel, Scarlet was still shocked that Hazel was able to enter. She had to go and teach knights a lesson to know where their loyalty should belong. "I am claiming everything that belongs to me." Hazel scanned the room, and her eyes halted at Raphael, who was looking at her with bored eyes. A young human girl was standing beside him and looking at Hazel with provoking eyes, but Hazel just rolled her eyes in exchange. Giving them a single glance, Hazel true-end away and walked towards the chair of the head, which was empty at that time, since all of them were having snacks while sitting on the sofa. "What do you think you are doing?" Scarlet stood up abruptly as she glared at the girl who was brazenly taking what was hers. Hazel sighed as she shook her head and looked at Scarlet with a tired look in her eyes. "Oh, my dear aunt, I think you are getting on your age. Are your ears not working, or do you have problems remembering things that were said just a few seconds ago? Shall I call a physician to look for you, or why? Did you not hear that I am claiming my position?" This time her voice was so chilly, and the aura was looming over her body that the staff took a step back. "Don't tell me that you ever forget I am the Empress of the Empire, while you are just a relative who leech on their family. I wonder why you even live here. Did your husband leave you due to your ugliness? Even if you are ugly, at least, you could have a good attitude, but you do not even have that. Sigh, I cannot blame him for what he had done." She shook her head as if she was feeling pity, not on the lady but on her husband. "What nonsense are you spouting now? How dare you?" She took a step further to snap her long neck, but Raphael raised his hands and stopped her. "Raphael, what are you?" Even if he needed the girl alive, she could still teach her a lesson without killing her completely. First of all, she would cut her tongue that spouts so much nonsense. Scarlet was fuming with anger as she stared at her nephew with killing intent in her eyes. "She is the Empress." His soft voice stunned everyone in the room. Even Hazel, who was ready to put on a strong fight, was shocked when she heard him. "What did you say?" Scarlet could not believe her ears. She must have heard wrong. How could he take her side? Raphael looked at her with a face full of sympathy. "No wonder she thought that you were ill. You need rest, Scarlet. You are working hard for so long. Let her work while you take rest and nurse back to your health. After all, she is the Empress." Her eyes widened as she noticed that he was not even looking at her but Hazel, who was smirking with her hands folded in front of her chest. How dare she look down at her? "Raphael, I am the one who is handling the affairs of this palace since your parents were killed. I mean after their death." She looked away when she felt his cold stare. It felt as if he would kill her that moment only. How could she forget? Damn it. It was only because of Hazel. "Scarlet, I did not like to repeat myself. You may leave now." The words were more of a threat than a command. Even Hazel and Natalie felt that change in his eyes and attitude than Scarlet, the woman who had seen him growing up. Knowing that she had crossed the limit and would not be able to win his favor for now, she bowed her head and left from there, rubbing her long heels with full force on the floor. Once the clinking sound disappeared, the cracked face of Raphael was back to normal too, as he turned to stare at Hazel, whose eyes were shining like a sly fox. A triumphant smile on her face, like a kid who succeeded in bullying an adult and took it as her biggest achievement. Unconsciously, a smile bloomed on his face, and the coldness in his eyes dissipated a lot. I never thought that we would meet here. He was talking like they were only acquaintances, accidentally bumping into each other at a party. Even I have not thought that I will see a new lover by your side, my lord. Hazel looked at the arrogant girl who was fuming too, as if she was the one who was insulted, not Scarlet. That, are you jealous, Hazel? I have already told you that I can discard all of them if you are ready to take their place. The flirtatious and warm look had returned on his face as he took steps towards her and held her left hand. Bringing it closer to his face, he kissed for longer seconds, and Ali let it go when she pulled it back. My lord, what are you saying? The eyes of the girl widened and her face turned pale. It had taken a lot of effort by her father for her to reach here. If she would not reach the bed of the Lord, then all the hard work would go in vain. If only this dumb girl had interfered a bit later. She was about to offer her blood as the meal if he would have in private, then was about to drop her clothes. But all the plans would go to the drain because of Hazel. English? Are you illiterate to not understand even that? She closed her mouth abruptly, listening to the irritated remark of the Lord. Even Hazel was at a loss of words as the man did not stop staring at her. His gaze had always been so intense that her heart started to race in her ribcage, and it became difficult for her to maintain her balance. It had been days since I last saw you. You are looking more beautiful than before. It had only been 3 days, and she was sure her face did not change even a bit. Now that I remember, we have been invited to a soiree by a human. It is closer to your father's empire. Would you like to go with me, family? They WWE just scumbags to send her here to die. If possible, she would send all of them to the prison rather than being amiable with them. Oh, that would have been wonderful, but I apologize, I have to spend my whole day here to learn the work. She replied in an apologetic voice to make the excuse look more natural, and her face relaxed when she saw him nodding his head. That's good. Then I will ask Cullen to arrange a designer dress for you. Be ready at 5 p.m. Did he even hear what she had said? She pursued her lips and glared at the man who was looking at her with challenging eyes. He had done that knowingly, as if challenging her to refuse him again. Shameless, why did he even ask at the first place then? The night creature continued to stare at her gloomy face and her moving lips, as if she was cursing her with amusement for a few seconds, then took a big dramatic sigh. See, I always get so lost in your beauty that I forget to even take meals. Now I know why I felt so much thirst when my eyes fell on you, my fair wife. The lips that were still muttering profanities for the vampire stopped and parted in disbelief as she took a step back instinctively when the man chuckled. I will see you in the evangeling love, when I will be satiated enough to not lust over you, taking a big sigh. He gave her one last look before turning and walking out with leisure steps, without even giving one single look at the girl waiting for him all this time in silence. As if he had forgotten about her presence completely. Natalie could not bear such an insult. She was fuming and her face was looming over with darkness. She gritted her teeth and glared at the girl, who was acting so high and mighty. Do you think just by barging in here shamelessly, you will be able to gain the attention of my lord? Ha, how delusional and brazen. Do not forget that he had chosen me over you, and I am the only one in his eyes now. Hazel rolled her eyes. Who was delusional and brazen here? Then go and take him. I am not interested in collecting trash anyways. Raphael, who had just taken a few steps out of the room, halted in his steps when he heard the snorting and arrogant words of Hazel. I'm not collecting trash anyways. He had heard the line before too. His eyes flickered with a dark ray of light, and for a long time he was not able to move away from his place as if he was frozen there. What did you just say? How could you insult my lord like that? The loud voice that could only fit to a banshee filled the room when Natalie shouted at Hazel, who covered her ears with his nose scrunched up. "What are you shouting for? Weren't you in a hurry to catch his attention? Since he had already gone, why are you still standing here? Go, shoo, shoo." The eyes of the girl widened when she saw Hazel waving her hands while showing her as if he was a dog that had come in brazenly, and her face turned red. You. Her chest heaved up and down with anger, yet she did not find proper words to insult the girl. "Me what? Do not tell me that, finding how powerful and beautiful I am, you have changed your target from him to me." She shook her head in a dramatic manner and added, "But I am not like him. My eyes are still working and I feel nauseating looking at ugly people. So, you better leave the room before I end up vomiting on you." The girl took a step back with horror when she saw Hazel making a nauseating face. Though she wanted to argue about the sarcastic comments Hazel had passed, she was afraid if she would stay with her for long, then Hazel would actually vomit on her. "You are crazy," she shouted at the top of her lungs, giving a glare to Hazel, and then she held her dress tightly in her hands and ran away from there. "Ha ha ha ha, what an interesting start of the day." Hazel could not help but hold her stomach as she saw the pale and scared face of the girl before running away. She was going to remember those expressions for a long time. After 3 days of boredom and confinement, who would have thought she would have an interesting start? "You seem to be too happy after calling me trash and blind." "I never thought that I would have such a bad image in front of my wife." The laughter on her face froze and her whole body turned rigid. The voice did not come from the door, but behind her where the chair was. Though she was sure there was no door. Could it be that these night creatures have other powers too, except drinking blood? She gulped, as she was not expecting him to not only hear her, but also come to question her directly. Her heartbeat stopped for a second before she closed her eyes and reminded herself, "He could not kill me. We have signed a contract. He could not kill me." Chanting these words like a spell, she finally turned back, but her pale face had turned back to normal, and there was no fear left on her face. "I was not expecting you to listen to the squabble of two girls. Or were you waiting for your lover to catch up to you? I apologize, but she is not here anymore." She had just run away from the door, afraid that she would be insulted further. Hazel shrugged her shoulders as her eyes scanned the window that was covered with curtains. As she had expected, there was no door, and she did not hear the sound of opening on windows. Where the hell did he come from? Insulted or puked upon? Which girl would be able to bear that? She turned to look back at him when she felt his amused voice. Though he was complaining, his face had an amused reaction. "I must say your skills of calling others ugly are top-notch. The girl was looking just fine to me." "Then go and talk to her. Why are you standing here and giving me goosebumps?" She rolled her eyes and walked towards the door without hiding her curiosity of his presence. "My lord, how do you come in behind me? I did not see you coming in." She knocked on the window to see if there was any secret passage, but she failed to notice anything different. "You are trying to change the topic to escape from your punishment, aren't you? You have not only cussed at me and insulted me, but also insulted our esteemed guests. You need to be punished for not being disciplined." Hazel, though his eyes were still sparkling, his voice was a threat. She could feel it, and all the nerves of her body tightened. Her eyes scanned his face for a few seconds, as if waiting for him to inform about the punishments. "You have to share lunch with me and Natalie. Since you are the one who made her cry, why did I pain my ears to hear her grievance, and you will be the one to escort her until she decides to leave the palace." Her brows knitted in a thin line as she realized that he was asking her to babysit his lovers. What's with him and the girls, and why did she need to intervene every time? When would she leave? She did not have the patience of more than a few hours to handle the ranting of the girl. That depends on you and her. She is free to go just now, but mind you, I need the deal his father is offering." So, as long as I got the deal, I did not care if the girl ran away crying in the next 3 seconds. You are good at handling girls, aren't you? So go and show the power of your vicious tongue. So, I am your personal mosquito killer now, was what he wanted her to do all the time, chasing away flies from him without affecting the deals he made from her parents. No, his brows furrowed as he nodded his head. Then how about getting imprisoned for treason for cursing your lord? Horror. The shocked expression on her face was worth watching, and Raphael had to pursue his lips to make sure that he did not laugh while looking at the girl who was scared, yet glaring at him for blackmailing her. He knew that she was shrewd, but at the same time her eyes were so clear. It increased his desire to tease her more so that she would frisk more. What are you saying? I hate the ugly people surrounding my lord. Of course, I would chase them away. It is my duty. She patted her chest as if she was taking a solemn oath while her face had that dramatic expressions as if she was most worried about him. Then hurry up and get ready for a tough fight. He waved the hands as Hazel had done in front of Natalie, like she was his personal dog. Gritting her teeth, but maintaining that flattering fake smile on her face, she walked out of the room with hurried steps to reach the dining hall. Natalie was already sitting there and telling her grievances to Damien, whose one hand was on her shoulder and other was on her waist. It looked like he was only helping a girl who was upset, but if looked closely, he had already taken the girl into his embrace and had the expressions of a predator on his face. Hazel's steps halted as she wondered if her services were still needed. The man was doing a marvelous job in winning over the girl so that she would not pester the Lord anymore. Just when she was still mulling over that thought, she felt a hand on her waist and her eyes widened. Her head snapped towards the left side instinctively, and her green eyes met the red ones who were no less than a black hole, or should it be the red hole in this case? Just how did he come too close? She was sure she had not seen him following her or heard footsteps at all. What was he moving like a phantom in the palace? He was more like a bored ghost than a lord and a vampire. Are you lost in my eyes like other girls? She blinked and realized that she was looking at his face all this time and turned her head away instantly when she heard him chuckling. Listening to their sweet whisper, Natalie's whole blood boiled. She could not believe that the girl who had called the Lord trash just a few seconds ago was in his arms and now flirting with him. Could she be any more shameless? She could not bear to see it while sulking in the corner. My lord, where have you been? I was looking for you all over the palace. In an aggrieved yet coy voice, the girl called the man as she walked over him with an intention to look weak and pitiful so that he would leave that vixen and embrace her instead. She fluttered her eyes seductively and raised her head to stare into the eyes of the man with her doe and wet eyes, but was stunned when she noticed how cold they were. She felt goosebumps all over her body, as she felt that she would die if she would stare into them any further, and immediately lowered her head. My lord, I apologize for the trouble, Lady Natalie. My wife was aggrieved, so I have to pacify her too. She told me that she was feeling nauseated after seeing an ugly frog. He shook his head as if he was too helpless. She asked me to find that ugly frog and kill it right away, otherwise she would not feel better. By any chance, have you seen an ugly frog roaming in the palace? Her hands clenched into a fist while her whole face turned ugly when she realized who the ugly frog was. The nerve of that girl. But if she would accept that she was that ugly frog, would she not be accepting that she was ugly? That, I have no idea what you are talking about, my lord. I have been busy waiting for you, so I did not get the chance to roam around the palace yet. I wonder if you are going to look for that ugly frog. Shall I accompany you so that we can spend some time too? And my lord did not have to spare his work for me. Swallowing all her pride, she looked at the man with an innocent face, but in her heart she was already strangling Hazel's neck. Just you wait. Let me take your place in his arms. Then I would tell him how you have called her trash and make sure that he would throw you out of the palace. She would make sure that the real face of the girl would be out today. Are you leaving me alone while giving company to an ugly frog, my lord? Hazel blinked her eyes as she bit her lips, seductively holding the front part of his shirt, with the upper 3 buttons already open. The pressure of her grip pulled the shirt further to the side with his chest to be seen, and Hazel could not help but give it a peek. Why in the world this trash was made with such a good sex appeal that I could have a nosebleed just by having a glimpse of his godly body? Natalie stared at the girl who was brazenly drooling over Raphael's body, and her face turned ugly. If she would not have been acting as a meek girl, she would have taught a lesson to Hazel. But she still has one weapon she could use. With an evil smirk that soon replaced by expressions full of pain, she whispered, "My lord, I have been looking for you to apologize because I became the reason for the rift between you two. But now that I see both of you together, I am relieved. I thought the lady had called you trash because of me." Her eyes widened and she covered her mouth as the last line left her mouth. "Oh, I should not have said that. Please forgive me." She bowed her head to hide the evil smirk on her face, as she was sure Hazel would be punished heavily. "Ah, you do not need to worry about it. I have already apologized to her to curb her anger." Raphael did not even look at Natalie as the words left his mouth. His eyes were looking at his wife with a doubting and helpless smile on his face. "He did what?" Natalie shrieked in her heart. How could that be? A lord the highest of being, the man with such caliber who was standing tall and high above them all, had apologized to a dumb girl who knew nothing but to throw tantrums. What spell had she done on him? She was so stunned that she did not know what to say. "Look at her. I think she is so shocked that we have to send her to the physician. Or shall we send her back to her villa in case she turns dumber than she already was, and I will be blamed for that?" Placing a hand on her chest, Hazel spoke the words in an overdramatic way. "Who has the audacity to blame you? I will annihilate their whole family with no future generation to live." He held her hands in his and brought her closer to his lips and kissed them gently. "Oh my!" She bowed her head with a shy expression on her face, but a scowl formed on her face when no one was able to see it. Why could the vampire not talk without touching her and kissing her every second? "I am fine. I am perfectly fine. What would happen to me?" The girl shook her head and a bright smile formed on her lips. Though her body was still trembling in anger, she would not give Hazel a chance to get rid of her that easily. Scarlett had personally told her that Raphael is not spending time with Hazel anymore. That was why she had forced her father to offer a deal to the Lord about opening the Silk Road again. How could she go without gaining him in exchange? "Moreover, we have still not discussed the conditions of the deal. My father would be disappointed if the Silk Road would not be opened again." She added as she knew Raphael was forcing his father for so long for that route. Though it was only open to the abandoned covens of the dark areas where he would gain nothing even if he started trade, he was adamant in having it. How could she let something precious to him slide so easily? With her face full of greed, it was not difficult for Hazel to understand that the girl had underhanded means to cling to Raphael, and then he would not let her go too. If she was an actor, then Natalie was sure she could win the award for her acts and behavior. There was no way she was able to give up. "Is that so? Then what are your conditions for the Silk Road to be opened again?" His grip on her hands suddenly tightened, creating a wince on her face which she tried her best to hide. Did the damned empire forget that he was too strong? What was he trying to achieve by crushing all the bones of her hands? "I apologize, but the business matters should only be handled by the Lord, since you are not even aware of what Silk Road is," Natalie replied with an arrogant smile on her face. Even when the girl knew the names of the nobles, there was no way that she would know about the areas and business deals too, especially the ones which are not even profit-making. You are right there. I did not know what that silk road is you are so proud about. A smile formed on the face of Natalie as Hazel nodded her head. Of course, you know nothing, you evil witch. Then I would ask you to excuse us, so that we can handle the work while you go and enjoy your leisure life, my lady. In other words, just shoo from here and leave us alone. To think that she was such a clingy lady. It was only right that Raphael was trying to avoid her even when she was beautiful. She had such a nasty temper. She did not know how to lure men at all. But it was fine. I would take care of Raphael and his everything when she would only end up shouting and fighting with Scarlet. But it did not mean that I could not know. Since I am the owner of all the properties of my husband and everything belongs to me now, it would only be right that I start taking interest in it. After all, you have to come to me for the signature in the end. Then who knew I might be busy in one of my leisure activities, and the deal you are worried so much about would not be completed. Natalie had never thought even in her dreams that Raphael not only gave her all the rights of the Empress, but also an equal right to take decisions on his properties. Weren't her words like a slap on her face when she called Hazel a brat who only knows how to waste her leisurely time? What did you say? Even Damien, who was sitting with imaginary popcorn in the corner, stood up and stared at Rafel with utter shock on his face. Even if he was putting an act in front of the world to gain everyone's favor and defeat his enemies, this decision was over the top. I never knew that even vampires could have weak ears. Aren't you famous for having strong senses? Before Raphael could open his mouth, Hazel looked at Damien with wonder as if she had heard someone unique about them. Her eyes were shining with surprise that the night creature felt at a loss of words. This woman always induced the desire to strangle her, even when beautiful women were his weakness. What are you talking about? My ears and other senses are working just fine, but I am still not sure what you meant by saying you have the authority to sign. The words came out through gritted teeth as he did not know why he was even explaining it to her. As if her eyes forced him to reply to her. Shaking his head on that absurd thought, he turned to look at his so-called cousin who had lost his brains, but was astonished to see that he was still staring at Hazel as if she was a moon goddess. Hazel, just what had she done to him? So, Miss Natalie, is it? Are you going to waste more of our time, or are we going to discuss the conditions you were talking about? Though Natalie wanted to scream and beat the girl, she only nodded her head with a forced smile. She would not give up after coming so far. She would find a way to get rid of Hazel when the conversation started. With that thought, she hardened her will to find a chance with Raphael. Raphael. Everyone's jaws hit that floor when Hazel drew small circles on the chest of Raphael and purred his name while stretching the last part. A ray of dark eyes flashed in the eyes of Raphael as his whole body turned rigid when the girl looked at him with seductive eyes, but the expressions on the girl's face didn't change at all. Like a vixen who had decided to trap her prey, she looked at him with a tempestuous look as she leaned closer to him. Haven't you promised me that you will buy the most precious jewel for me today? Are you going to go back on your words just because of an ugly fro? I miss Natalie and decided to visit us. She blinked her wet, animated eyes as a hurt person as she pulled his shirt only to bring him closer to his face when Raphael ended up just an inch away from her lips. His eyes filled with dark rays that anyone could sense the danger from afar, much less about Hazel, whose survival instincts were top-notch. But it was too late to back away. For completing the mission and to save her face, she would not give up even if she would lose an inch of her hair later. Don't tell me that I am secondary to an ugly FR. I miss Natalie. The man grabbed her waist and brought her closer, finishing the minimum gap between them only for their lips to touch and her eyes widened. Her hands that were holding his chest dug deeper into his skin to remind the night creature that it was just drama, but he did not budge. Her sweet fragrance was too enticing to let go, and how could he let go of a meal that was presented to him by herself? If someone was to blame, it was her. Completing shifting the blame on her, he touched those lips and sucked them for a second before falling, letting her go. Though the kiss was only for a few seconds and it was just a mere touch of lips, it was enough to embarrass the girl whose face had turned redder than blood and her eyes had turned glassy. She was looking lost, yet the silly look on her face was a breath of fresh air that she looked so breathtaking. His desire to touch her only increased looking at her stunned and adorable expressions. "Master Damien, why don't you?" Natalie stopped in her tracks when she noticed that not only Raphael but Damien was also staring at Hazel with a strange look in his eyes. He did not even hear when she called her, but his eyes were fixed on her lips that were still parted. They were looking a bit wet, but she didn't understand what was so special about Hazel that both men were staring at her as if she was a goddess or a vixen. She was sure a vixen. She could not accept it. She moved closer, and in her anger, she lost her rationality completely as she stomped on the feet of Damien, and he finally looked away from Hazel to her. But there was no desire in his eyes but complete bloodlust that Natalie gulped. Fear started to crawl in her eyes. On the other side, Raphael, who was enjoying her silly look, finally let her waist go and nodded his head with a sweet smile on his face. "Anything you say is my command, my dear wife. I will leave now to fulfill your wish." Kissing the back of her hands once again, Raphael turned and left, but Hazel was still looking at the empty space with stunned eyes. Arg, did the man just steal a kiss from her and then run away? She wanted to run behind him and beat him for being such a hooligan, but she knew that she would not be able to match his steps. Even if she did, she would not be able to beat him in the end. "Gloomy, let it be. I will be big-hearted for now." "But my lord," Hazel chuckled as she saw Natalie trying to run behind the man. "See, that was why I didn't even try," she muttered with a smile over her face as she saw Natalie hopping like a frog in the garden. But then she felt as if someone was trying to make a hole in her back. She turned only to see Damien looking at him with strange eyes. "Don't tell me you want to kill me because I got more power, just like your mother. Well, even if you hate me, I could do nothing about it." She shrugged her shoulders as she walked towards the table with her head raised high and sat on it arrogantly. Now that we are here, tell me, what are your conditions, Lady Natalie?" Taking a sip of tea, she looked at Natalie with sparkling eyes when the girl glared at her with a gloomy face. "Why are you looking at me like that? If I did not know any better, I would have thought that you are here to snatch my husband, not to sign any deal. Or do you only like to talk with men? Even if that is the case, Master Damien can give you company. He is good at talking and playing music. You would enjoy his company more than my husband." Just as the words left her mouth, Damien turned to stare at her with intense eyes again. "Do you really feel that way, my lady?" What? Why was he asking as if my thoughts matter a lot to him? She didn't even know if he could hold instruments, much less about playing them. She was only faking it to keep the girl away from her husband. Of course, Master Damien is very famous among the ladies. A smirk formed on his face that gave a foreboding feeling to the girl. "But haven't you called me ugly the other day, my lady? Was he trying to take revenge for it now? How petty." Now that I see you in proper lights, you do not seem that bad. And do not press me for more." "How good is not bad in your dictionary, my lady? Could it be equal to handsome and perfect?" She gritted her teeth as he pressed her for response, but maintained the smile on her face. "That is not the time to discuss all this, Master Damien. The lady is waiting for us." Natalie wanted to nod, but Damien passed a cold look to her that she shook her head like a rattled drum as Gur's grip on her dress tightened. Not only Raphael, even Damien was giving his whole attention to this fool. Just what was so good in her? Just you wait. I would go and tell Scarlett about this incident. She would set you right. See, the lady is not in a hurry at all, So why don't we finish our discussion before we start another one? So tell me, my lady, how do I look in your eyes?" He gave a provoking look to the girl whose eyes had turned gloomy. Just how in the world the matted ended his looks. "Why does it matter what I think? If the girl's like you, then you should be happy with it." She pressed, but his eyes only grew intense when the words left her mouth. "What if I say that it matters to me?" Even he was surprised when the words left his mouth, and he saw a ray of shock pass her eyes. "I mean, this is the first time someone has called me ugly. I would not be able to settle with that title." "Ah, I never knew men are also so petty to care about being called ugly. It is not like I have called you gay." She shrugged as she took another sip of her drink, but his eyes turned darker and dangerous as he took a step closer to her. "What did you say? Say that again." He loomed over her as his imposing aura started to cover her. If it would have been any other person, then she would have been intimidated. But after feeling the strong aura of Raphael all the time, Damien did not stand a chance at all. "Why, are your ears not working again? I would highly advise that you shall go and have them checked by a physician, or it would only go worse with time. Then not only you would be ugly but deaf too. If that would be the case, then I would make sure to drink all the blood of the person who had cursed me. It has been days since I have killed someone while having my meal. But I am sure the experience would be worth having. What do you think, my lady?" A shiver ran down her spine as she stared hard at the man who was threatening to kill her by drinking all her blood, but she would not give up after coming this far. With a leisure smile on her face, she nodded as she took a pause to take another sip of the drink in her hands. I hope the person is someone unimportant, or I am afraid you would end up in a more miserable death by her family, especially her husband. You know that lovers can kill for their love, and not forget about the safety of their lovers. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story. And if have any suggestion to a new novel or want next part of any series, comment down. Our target is to get 1K subscriber. There will be SUPRISC for all of you. Stay tuned.